The only thing I can think of what it might be is Satan. So.
911, what's the location of your emergency?
I have no idea where I'm at. I am in the middle of nowhere. We were looking for Chantay Blankinship.
Okay.
We found her.
You okay? Did you need any medical attention?
Is she alive? She's dead.
When Jackie and Charlie went out searching for Chantay, they were holding on to the hope that she was still alive. But what they discovered was beyond their wildest expectation. The brutality of Chantay's final moments would leave everyone who knew her and the small community in complete shock and disbelief. To understand why, I need to take you back to February the 13th, May 2016. This is Victor, and this week on Crimes Anatomy, we have a loving woman whose life was cut horrendously short for an inexcusable reason. Understanding the reasons may not make sense to us, but this is all part of the dark side of human nature. 25-year-old Rhonda Chantay Blankinship left her home in the North Lake neighborhood of Lake Brownwood, Texas, for her usual evening walk. But as the sunset and the evening turned to night, Chantay had still not returned home. At 8:48 p.m., Chantay's grandfather, Charlie Barnett, gave her a call. She answered and said that she was on her way back. But as you know, Chantay never made it home. Late that night, Charlie searched the neighborhood for her, and by morning, the family reported her missing. They were particularly concerned because Chantay had an intellectual disability. Understanding this, the police opened a case and started looking for her right away. Due to a childhood development disorder, Chantay couldn't read or write more than a few words and suffered from a speech impediment. She needed constant care and was unable to work most jobs. But despite this, she was still well known and loved in the small community. She lived a normal life, living with a grandfather and a recently moved-in boyfriend. She sang in the choir at North Lake Community Church. She had 7 siblings, and they were fiercely protective of her. And they had reasons to be. She was petite, just under 5 feet tall, and weighing less than 90 pounds. She had no known enemies, no drama, no history of drug use. So when she vanished, nothing about it made sense. 2 days after Chantay went missing, volunteers from the community began a search. They figured she couldn't have gone far. 2 of the searchers were a couple, Charlie Radel and Jackie Neal, who went looking around an old Victorian house about 5 miles from her home, out on County Road 424. They went through a narrow, unpaved road that passes through isolated countryside with heavy vegetation to get to the house. The abandoned house itself looked like something out of a horror movie. Rotting wood, holes in the roof and walls, everything falling apart from the inside out. It had a reputation as well as a haunted house, likely because of how it looked. At the very entrance, Charlie and Jackie spotted a clump of brown hair and a bright pink-purple bracelet. Hair that matched Chantay, as did the bracelet she was known to wear. Nearby were fresh tire tracks, and walking around they also found another pink bracelet near the storm cellar. The possibility that something terrible had happened to Chantay was now disturbingly real, and that's when they found her. Her body lay upside down at the bottom of the stairs. She was only wearing a t-shirt. Her head and face were covered in blood. Nearby was a bloody lawnmower blade, potentially the murder weapon. It was 5:19 p.m. when Chantay Blankinship was found dead, brutally murdered. When investigators arrived, they found more clumps of brown hair in the area, suggesting she had been dragged by the hair to the cellar. An autopsy confirmed she died a violent death, with blunt force trauma to the head, face, neck, and much more. The killer didn't use the sharp end of the blade. No, instead, he used the weight of it to smash the petite Chantay to death. There were also signs of strangulation, sexual assault, and a shoe print on her chest. What a violent and harrowing ordeal she went through. It was just too unimaginable for most to fathom. Whoever did this was clearly a merciless, ruthless killer. And the way it was carried out, with no attempts made to even cover the body, it's unlikely this was their first time. And the day that this occurred on, Friday the 13th, could this be symbolic to strike fear in others? Sexual assault was confirmed, as was DNA left behind by the killer, specifically semen. This allowed the investigators to create a DNA profile. The Browns County Sheriff's Office homicide investigation, led by Sergeant Scott Bird and Texas Ranger Jason Shea, began by speaking to Chantay's friends, family, and anyone, but it seemed they could find no one with any reason to hurt her. They did learn that Chantay had actually met up with a girlfriend of hers that evening for a walk, and they had been walking together for a few hours when Chantay received that phone call from her grandfather to come back home. That's when they went their separate ways, with Chantay heading home. Was the killer watching her, waiting for her to be alone, and then pouncing on that opportunity?
We were just driving around looking for her. Everybody met at 3 at the church to go look for her, and we were just driving around.
I walked around in the house.
Uh-huh.
And didn't see nothing in there and went to all the outbuildings.
Yeah.
And I was coming back, and that storm shelter there had a bunch of grass knocked down. So I run around and looked, and there she is. She's upside down in there. And she is beat. I got a daughter that age. I don't mind it.
Investigators spoke to Jackie and Charlie. They scrutinized their story, but both came out solid, and they also passed polygraph tests. And none of the evidence on the scene pointed to their possible involvement. Next up was Chantay's boyfriend, 26-year-old live-in John Adams. They'd been together for over 3 years, but the relationship had been rocky. Chantay was reportedly seeing someone else on the side, and some said John was controlling. And the investigators noticed a shed full of lawnmowers. Could one of them have gone missing and used to kill Chantay? Only time would tell. Investigators searched the house and the pickup truck, and speaking to John, he stated that while he and Chantay argued sometimes, he loved her. He also had a solid alibi. That day, he said goodbye to Chantay and left for work at 6 p.m. He worked an overnight shift at a restaurant and was there the entire time. Next up was Colin Smith, the other man Chantay was seeing on the side. Colin was a man in his 20s. He lived nearby and did odd jobs like mowing lawn. He did not have a good reputation, and Chantay's father didn't approve of him hanging out with his daughter. That evening, Chantay also told a friend that Colin had asked her to meet up with him, and specifically, not to tell anyone about this. Understandably, this statement, though hearsay, raised alarms. Colin claimed that Chantay walked by his house at 6:37 p.m., said they were just friends. Yes, they had slept together in the past, something he admitted to the investigator who pressured him. But he claimed that he wasn't aware she was in a serious relationship, and they stopped seeing each other this way afterwards, other than as friends, of course. The problem was, not everyone believed him. In total, the investigators interviewed more than 100 people, including all local registered sex offenders. They even interrogated North Lake Community Church's pastor, as he was calling almost daily about Chantay's case. He too was ruled out. Over 30 men, including family members, voluntarily gave DNA samples, but none of them matched the DNA found on Chantay. And when that DNA was entered into the National Combined DNA Index System, or CODIS, no matches or leads were found. The lack of clear suspects, leads, and motives felt like a dead end. But to the credit of the investigators, they never gave up. They checked every possible lead, no matter how strange it may be. And boy, there were so many. One person claimed they saw Chantay getting into a stranger's car. Another woman said her boyfriend had bragged about killing her. And another told police that her ex-husband was part of an occult gang, and they killed Chantay as part of a ritual because that happened on Friday the 13th. But none of these tips led to any solid evidence. These were just sick, shameful people wanting to get some attention of their own. And despite all this effort, the case eventually stalled. On the 1-year anniversary of Chantay's death, friends and family gathered for a vigil at the North Lake Community Church. A $5,000 reward by Crime Stoppers was shared, but once again, nothing concrete, no leads came forward. Then, Sergeant Bird looked into a new DNA technology, Phenotyping, a forensic tool that recreates and predicts a suspect's appearance built from their DNA. Bird contacted Parabon Nanolabs, a Virginia-based company that specializes in this technology. Parabon had a reported 50% success rate in helping solve cold cases. The procedure cost $3,600, and the district attorney's office agreed to split the costs. And DNA swabs from Chantay's body were sent to the labs. For those of you who didn't see my last video, let me help explain how DNA phenotyping works. Parabon Nanolabs uses single nucleotide polymorphism, or SNP, to generate digital composite images or snapshots based on DNA. The method analyzes markers that influence visible traits such as eye color, hair color, skin tone, freckles, facial structure, and ancestry. It requires an actual DNA sample to function. This technique is still going through peer reviews and further scrutiny. Of course, as any new technology, there are critics. Civil rights groups and defense attorneys argue that physical appearance is not determined solely by genetics. Diet, lifestyle, cosmetic changes such as growing a beard, or influence from drugs can affect appearances. Still, studies on identical twins show us how similar many of them turn out to be. And besides, if this works, it can help narrow down potential suspects for further investigation. About 1 month after submitting the DNA sample, Parabon returned the following profile of the unknown male suspect. Ancestry: over 90% Northern European and 6% Northern Middle Eastern. Skin tone: fair to very fair. Eye color: blue to green. Hair color: brown to blonde. The company generated a digital image of the suspect, assuming an age of 25 and a BMI of 22, meaning they were on the lean side. Sergeant Byrd wasted no time. He posted the composite image generated by Parabon Nanolabs on the Brown County Sheriff's Office Facebook on November 8th. But many people commented that it looked like any other white guy. But when Chantay's brother saw the photo, it reminded him of someone. Quote, "That looks like Ryan Riggs." Riggs, 21, was a neighbor and former classmate of Chantay's brother. He had bullied Chantay's brother before. He was an acquaintance of Chantay's boyfriend, but had never been considered a suspect. He was never even interviewed, as he had no known close connection to Chantay or her family and had not previously drawn attention in the investigation. The only known connection to Chantay was the fact that he went to the same church. When police tried to locate Riggs, he had disappeared. His parents said they hadn't seen him for almost a week and a half. Deputies searched for several days, but they came up empty. But during the search, they discovered that Riggs had been illegally dumping trash. A warrant was issued on that charge, but he remained missing. His parents later admitted that Riggs had briefly returned to leave a $20 bill and a note apologizing for missing his mom's birthday. But 6 days later, Riggs reappeared. On November 15th, 2018, exactly 18 months after Chantay's body was found, Ryan Riggs walked into the North Lake Community Church with his parents. He asked to speak with Pastor Ron Keener, and he confessed to killing Chantay and requested to address the congregation. That evening, Riggs stood before a small group and said, "I'm a murderer. I killed Chantay Blankinship." He gave no details and didn't mention a sexual assault. After the confession, Riggs, his parents, and Pastor Keener drove straight to the sheriff's office. There, Riggs confessed again, this time on record, to Sergeant Byrd and Texas Ranger Jason Shea. The interview lasted 2 hours. It was a weirdly calm, matter-of-fact confession, much different from a typical one because there were no denials and no back and forth that usually occur before a suspect finally admits his involvement. Riggs came straight out and said,
"I'm the one who murdered Chantay Blankinship. They wanted to kill somebody. They wanted to raid."
What is it? Your destructive side and what you're talking about?
The only thing I can think of what it might be is Satan.
Satan.
Riggs said he knew Chantay, just like everyone in the community knew her. He said he saw her by the community mailboxes, asked her to hang out, and took her in his truck to a lookout point by the lake. He said he talked and flirted with Chantay.
She was walking past the mailboxes and came right up. I saw it and asked her if she needed a ride. and she got in the truck, and I asked her if she was going home. She said no. I asked her if she wanted to hang out. She said yes. Whenever I saw her, it's like I've always had this different part of me that it just wants nothing but destruction and evil. And whenever I saw her that day, it took over.
Then took her to a secluded area, strangled her in the front seat of his truck, took her clothes off, and essayed her. He said Chantay fought him, but she couldn't scream because his arm was pressing against her neck. While she was unconscious but still alive, he took her to the abandoned Victorian house. He dragged her by the hair and threw her over the fence. Then he got a lawnmower blade out of the back of his truck and beat her on the head and face with it to make sure she was dead. Riggs said he was thinking, I need to make sure she doesn't wake up and tell on me. Riggs admitted that he also stomped on Chantay's chest. After he left the body in the storm cellar, he took Chantay's cell phone and threw it away several miles down the road. Riggs told police, I wanted both things to happen, the rape and the murder. He described, having a part of me that wants nothing but destruction and evil. He admitted he knew Chantay had disabilities and chose her because she was small and would be an easy target. When asked why he confessed, Riggs told police that he had been at home hiding when they came to serve the warrant for illegal dumping, and I knew the cops weren't there at the house about the trash. He admitted that he'd gone on the run after that day. He said that he had contemplated ending it all and had spent time talking to God. He claimed that it was God that told him, if you want salvation, this is what you need to do. Riggs said he went to church to turn myself into God. Now I'm turning myself into the law. When asked what punishment Riggs thought he deserved, he replied, death for sure. Deputies continued the interview, asking about his background. Riggs admitted to frequently using and selling meth, but claimed he wasn't high during the crime. He did confess to also try to drown his pet chihuahua, and he had a history of mental illness, and hinted at being sexually abused as a child. He told investigators that he had attended Chantay's funeral and helped in the search for her, sharing about her disappearance on Facebook. Despite his disturbing statements, Riggs appeared articulate, coherent, and mentally present. He defined legal terms accurately and consented to a DNA swab, and his DNA matched the semen found in Chantay's body. Prosecutors subpoenaed Riggs' school, medical, and mental health records. At age 16, he had stolen a gun and threatened to end it all. He was briefly hospitalized and diagnosed with depression, nothing more. His juvenile record showed minor offenses and disciplinary issues. Prosecutors expected the defense to either claim insanity or concede guilt and focus on avoiding the death penalty. But there was still an unknown factor. How would a jury interpret Riggs' public confession? Would it be seen as remorse or manipulation? Chantay had been raised by her grandfather, Charlie Barnett, a Navy veteran and former police officer. He was 87 years old at the time of her death and was still working nights. Although he seemed healthy, prosecutors moved to take his deposition as a precaution. The deposition went smoothly, but Barnett later admitted to the prosecutors that it rattled him to his core to sit in the same room as that, quote, son of a bitch, Riggs. A few months later, Barnett suffered a stroke. The stress of losing Chantay and learning the horrible details of her death had clearly taken a toll on him. As the trial approached, the defense attorneys proposed a plea. Riggs would accept life without parole if the death penalty was off the table. Their argument was the high cost of a capital punishment trial and the years of appeals. After consulting with Chantay's family, the prosecutors agreed. The family wanted closure without years of appeals or reliving the trauma in court. On February 15, 2019, Riggs pleaded guilty to capital murder. He was sentenced to life without parole. Chantay's entire family was in the courtroom, including Mr. Barnett. Her mother, Michelle McDaniel, delivered a powerful victim impact statement. She said, "You will never get married. You will never have grandkids for your mom and dad. My daughter would have forgiven you because that's the way she was. I hope one day you realize everything you've done, not only to us, but to your own family. Later that day, the family posted a photo of Chantay by the lake with the caption, "I got my justice." Folks, this case shows how powerful DNA phenotyping can be. For over 2 years, investigators had no solid leads until they saw this new technology and created a face from the suspect's DNA. The image jogged someone's memory, and it eventually led to a full confession. Without it, the case might still be unsolved. This same tool could be a game changer for other cases, like the Setagaya family murders in Japan, which I covered in my last video. In that case, the killer left behind a lot of DNA, but no match has ever been found. Maybe it's time to find a different approach. A DNA-based composite might finally give investigators and the public a face to look for. It's not perfect, but sometimes one image is all it takes to break a case wide open. This is Victor. Thanks for watching.